أناجي الحق في ليل بهيم أصدق النجوى وأدعو الله من قلب سليم يطلب التقوى أناجي الحق في ليل بهيم أصدق النجوى وأدعو الله من قلب سليم يطلب التقوى.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Ahlan wa sahlan wa marhaban bikum, and welcome to another edition of Perspective. My name is Faizel Patel. On tonight's show, we look at Human Rights Day that was celebrated on Saturday. Motorists have thousands of rands of unpaid fines, and UCSA condemns ISIS, and we'll also look at some tech news. Remember, you can interact with me by sending me a mail on faisal@itvnetworks.tv. Drop me a tweet on @Faizi143, or you can even comment on facebook.com/Faizel Patel. Now, as the country marked Human Rights Day on Saturday, the Ahmed Kathrada Foundation, which is based in Lenasia, has expressed concern about the resurgence of racism and interracial mistrust in South Africa. What the foundation has done, it has called on all South Africans to mark that particular day, or Human Rights Day, by creating awareness about and pledging to fight against racism. 21st of March is normally commemorated as Human Rights Day in South Africa and is marked globally as the International Day for the Elimination of Racial Discrimination. Now, the day is also used to remember those killed in the Sharpeville massacre 55 years ago. Now, the Kathrada Foundation's director, Sean Bolton, says that while South Africans may celebrate the triumph over apartheid on that particular day, we should not forget that racism is still prevalent in our society. And Bolton goes on to say, political freedom and dignity was won through the defeat of apartheid and was entrenched throughout the adoption of the Constitution. Now, however, he says we cannot be hypocritical and celebrate our human rights record when schools are still racially divided. Now, I want to come into this point here. When I say schools are racially divided, we know about the Curro school that was separating children in various classes. And we know that some schools tend to have more maybe white students, or some are supposed to have more black students. But these things have emanated, and racism, unfortunately, is still prevalent in South Africa at the moment, and the resurgence of it, obviously, is concerning the Kathrada Foundation. And what he goes on to say is, what we have found is that a resurgence of racism embedded in almost any of our schools, or in almost many of our schools, both public and private schools. So, the thing is now, 20 years into our democracy, we have strived so hard to fight for this democracy, and yet this ugly racism, this menace, it hasn't died out as yet. And you still see, don't you? And if you see a mixed a couple or a interracial couple, you go to a shopping center, or you go to a picnic place, or wherever you may go to, you still get the looks, you still get the stares, and unfortunately, this whole thing hasn't sort of been eradicated completely. Now, we need to ask ourselves the question, why is this still taking place? It is a question that is so broad and is so much to unpack that we will never actually get to the bottom of it. So, while we celebrate Human Rights Day, let us take into cognizance that certain places are still prevalent where racism does exist. Now, Bolton also raised concerns about the various forms that racism takes, providing an example of the recent xenophobic attacks in Soweto. And we know how long that went on, for a couple of weeks, where there was attacks on Somali-owned shops, on foreign nationals, on foreign-owned shops as well. And it was absolutely terrible. And that's not going even to the looting. But these people are seeking asylum in our country, or they are seeking shelter in our country because they are being subjected to certain torment or certain atrocities in their country. And although maybe sometimes people feel, and I know that it is a possibility, that people say, no, they're taking our jobs and they're taking certain maybe benefits away from us, that sort of stuff. But, I mean, we need to treat them with respect. If you feel or if they don't have a right to be in this country, then it's not for us to decide or attack them. Let the government decide what is right and wrong. But also on the flip side, there is also the question of that they have shops in specific strategic areas. When I was covering a particular attack in Soweto, one of the people that I spoke to says that there was a shop owned by a foreign national in a particular area. It made it easier for her to go buy bread or milk or any of your daily necessities or amenities that you might need. And because they burned the shop down, they looted the shop, now she had to walk up to 2 kilometers away to go buy just the basic necessity of bread. So sometimes they are providing the essential services that people might need. So while that we celebrated Human Rights Day, again I'm going to mention, is that there are these racism acts or racism problems that are sort of emanating and being sprouted up in isolated incidents, sometimes more prevalent in like the Soweto incidents. And then Bolton goes on to say, South Africans should use Human Rights Day to recommit to the ideal of non-racialism. And I think we all, our viewers, ourselves, myself, everybody, need to recommit to the idea of non-racialism. So let me ask you the question. Have you been ever subjected to a racist insult, a racist comment, or put in a particular situation where you were sort of abused by maybe a member of another race? Let me know your thoughts and comments on my Facebook page, on faizelpatel.com, facebook.com/Faizel Patel, on my email at faisal@itvnetworks.tv, or even on Twitter at Faizy143. Let me know your thoughts and comments. Have you been subjected to racist comments, racial taunts, racist taunts, or maybe even physically abused by probably a person of the opposite race? I think it's a broad discussion, and I think that after 20 years of democracy, that we need to put this at rest. We need to finally get rid of it. Whether it will get rid of it, I'm not sure, but maybe you can even comment on that as well. Another story that we want to cover today also is about traffic fines. We know last week we spoke about it, where people that speed, and if you're guilty of not having a number plate, or if you're guilty of not having a license, and if you're speeding, that you must pay the repercussions of it, and in the form of traffic fines. But motorists who have thousands of rands of unpaid fines, now this is where it's a bit disconcerting, and this is just my opinion, that whether they're guilty or not, motorists who have thousands of rands of unpaid fines hiding in their outboxes, in your email, at home, wherever it is, have been given an escape clause. And I think a lot of people will be happy by this. Now, this is after the Johannesburg Metro Department announced that those who received fines from the JMPD via ordinary mail. So when I mean ordinary mail is when you go to your post box or you go home and you open up your post box and there's a fine there for speeding or for not having a license or for whatever the case may be. So these fines, which are from the JMPD via ordinary mail between August 2010 and December 21st, 2012, can apply to have them cancelled. Yes, you can have them cancelled if it is within those dates. Now, the announcement was made by the JMPD director. His name is Gerry Gerneke, and he says this was in reply to a report by the public protector, Thuli Madonsela, in December last year, in which he said that the JMPD acted improperly when it sent fines by ordinary post instead of registered mail. So the ideal is basically that when you go to your post office box or when you go home, you get a little slip to say there's a registered mail waiting for you, and when you go to the post office to collect that, that's how the fine supposed to have been issued or posted by the traffic department. Now the JMPD says motorists can fill in an administrative adjudication of road traffic offences, or ARTO, representation form, which is found on the ARTO website or at any JMPD office. Now, they added also that members of the public who had already paid fines. So, if you already paid a fine for speeding or whatever the case may be, and you received it by ordinary mail, you are not entitled to refund, or even if you pleaded guilty, if you went and you didn't have your license and you went to court or you went to the traffic department and you said, listen, yes, I am guilty, I didn't have my license. When you pay a fine, you have pleaded guilty to that fine. The public protector made a specific finding that no money would be reimbursed where people have paid an admission of guilt and paid their fines. So, if you paid your fines, you're not going to get your money back. And Guernica also said that the JMPD had complied with the public protector's proposed remedial action for issuing infringement notices via ordinary mail instead of registered mail. JMPD has also subsequently placed an apology in 8 mainstream newspapers circulating in Johannesburg. The apology adverts appeared in newspapers from the 23rd of March and almost cost 200,000 rand. Now, since 22nd of December 2012, all such notices are being issued via registered mail at the cost of 10 million rand per month. So, if you fall within those dates and if you got fines, then if you want to cancel them, go onto the ARTA website and fill in that application form, and you might have that fine cancelled if you feel that you were in the wrong. But my personal opinion is that if you are guilty, go ahead and pay the fine. You have infringed the laws and rules of the road, and I think that you need to take responsibility for that. We're going to go for a break. After the break, we're going to be speaking about a very important story where the United Ulama Council of South Africa has issued a press statement condemning the Islamic State or IS. Stay tuned to Perspective.
أصدق النجوى وأدعو الله من قلب سليم يطلب التقوى إلهي صرت في ظرف عصيب فاكشف البلوى فيا ربي
Welcome back to Perspective. We know that IS is recruiting people from across all of the world, including South Africa, and some of our bodies needed to take action. We needed some answers, and we needed press statements from ulama bodies. Well, the United Ulama Council of South Africa, or UCSA, has condemned Islamic State, or IS, as a misguided political enigma which has distorted the teachings of Islam. Now, in a statement, UCSA says, IS's duplicity is only outmatched by its savagery and barbarity and has divided and weakened the Muslim world, legitimized murder in the name of Islam, and shifted focus from the actual hotspots around the globe. Now, IS, for some that might know, which is sometimes referred to as Daesh or ISIS, has captured the imagination and headlines of the media throughout the world, including ordinary people. UCSA says IS has provided a lifeline to young Muslim militants in search of giving expression to their pent-up frustration with the political, social, and economic servitude in their respective countries. Now, I've spoken to Maulana Ibrahim Bam, who is the Secretary General of Jamiatul Ulama South Africa, which is an affiliate of UCSA, and he always comes on ITV as well. And he says this lifeline has attracted people towards IS's narrative that governments in Muslim countries of the Middle East are corrupt, irreligious, and heavily influenced by the United States and other Western powers. And he goes on to say it does not, and he says it does not represent Islam in many ways and many reasons, and amongst them is declaring an Islamic state with no legitimate Sharia, which is Islamic law, procedure, or consultation, branding Muslims as disbelievers, rejecting rule of senior Islamic scholars, and capturing and kidnapping activists, journalists, and religious figures. We've seen Jihadi John killing journalists. We've seen them killing those Egyptian Christians on the beach. I mean, this is totally outrageous. Now, UCSA says joining or supporting IS's genocidal cult, because it projects itself to be the most obvious counterpart to the West, is misplaced and will prove to be a fatal attraction. And the question again, let me ask you a question. Do you think that we as a Muslim community or the community of South Africa need to be more frank about ISIS? Should we start speaking about this? They are recruiting. There are reports that even South Africans from South Africa has gone on to join ISIS. Let me know your thoughts and comments. Another story that we're going to be touching on is the traffic congestion. You know, we've spoken about it before, where sometimes the traffic is very, very bad when you're traveling to places like Sandton, Sunning Hill, where ITV studios are. So with 300,000 vehicles a day entering and leaving Sandton, a number which is expected to increase by 50% over the next 10 years. The city's Department of Transport has come up with an integrated plan focusing on public transport. And I think it's about time. We've had a few shows on ITV where we had Ibrahim Mullah speaking about the Nasrec Transport Hub. Now, various transportation forms were being taken into account, and these include the Ria Vaya bus lanes, which are under construction, new cycle and pedestrian lanes, new bridges that will link Alexandra, Sandton, and the restructuring of Metro bus and park and ride sites as well. Now, the Ria Vaya trunk and complementary routes will include stations in the Westgate, Hillbrow, Randburg, Ekurhuleni, Midrand, Gandhi Square, Sunninghill, Emothogeni, and Informal Settlement, and also in Greenside and Edenvale. Now, earlier this month, the city of Johannesburg turned the sod for 130 million pedestrians and cycle bridge over to cater for about 10,000 people to commute on a daily basis between Alexandra and Sandton. Now, a new bus rapid transit bridge will also be constructed over the M1. Now, the project is expected to complete it by December 2016. In addition, the Watt Street interchange will be improved and the Pan Africa site will be transformed into Melrose Arch style developments that will offer accommodation as well as retail and office space in one place so that people won't have to use transport to get to shops and work. And it just makes it easier, especially when you want to visit. Instead of taking out the car, it will be easier and more relaxing to walk or even take a bicycle to go to a shopping center. The Executive Director of the department, Lisa Seftel, says the Transport Department is also working with the Gautrain authorities as well as metered and minibus taxi operators to implement the closure of the existing Sandton taxi rank, which will be temporarily housed on the corner of Catherine Street and Albertine Avenue. Now, a new taxi holding facility will be constructed on the corner of Catherine and West Streets. Now, provision will be made for a taxi rank for 50 vehicles at the Gautrain station. So, great improvement there. All of this will lead to a denser public transport network, making public transport more accessible and reducing the need to use a car to come into the Sandton CBD. Now, the city is also meeting the owners and developers of the Bright Water Commons, which is the old Randburg waterfront in Ferndale, Monte Casino in Fourways, and Nickel Way in Bryanston to discuss erecting park and ride areas, which will make it very much easier for people that's especially traveling long distances. They will also be looking for sites along Louis Botha Avenue and Old Johannesburg Road for dedicated park and ride facilities to develop in partnership with the Ria Vaya's park and ride facilities. But the most important thing, according to Seftel, was behavioral changes in motorists and commuters. There's no sense. You can have the world-class system, but if you don't want to use the public transport system, then it's really of no use. We need to change our mindsets that public transport is safe and it must be used so it can ease the congestion on South Africa's roads. Now, building infrastructure and introducing services, she says, will not necessarily mean that people will get out of their cars to use public transport, like I mentioned, or cycle. The city has to enable and support behavioral changes through providing high-quality public transport information and making sure that using these modes are safe. Now, part of this is our ability to effect commuter and motorist behavioral changes. This is possible, as we saw during the 2010 World Cup, where people used public transports, where it's possible to change commuter patterns. Another quick story that we're going to be speaking about is about a ring, a pornographic ring that was uncovered. Last week, a team of specialized detectives from the South African Police Service, Family Violence, Child Protection and Sexual Offences Unit of Gauteng arrested a couple from the Eastern Cape for processing and distributing child pornography. How sad is it? Innocent children. During an operation that was conducted between SAPS and the Belgian police and with the assistance of the United States of America's Federal Bureau of Investigation, or the FBI, the team, while searching the couple's residence in Port Elizabeth, found 15 hard drives, 2 cellular phones, 124 compact discs, 2 USBs, and 2 cameras and 1 micro SD card. Now, the couple, a 33-year-old man and a 22-year-old woman already appeared in the Port Elizabeth Magistrates Court on the 17th of March and were granted 5,000 rand bail each. Now, they have been warned to reappear in the same court on the 24th of April. Investigations into this network of child pornography, which the details first came to the fore in the city of Antwerp in Belgium, commenced about a few months ago when authorities in Belgium arrested a man for the possession of this forbidden material. Further investigations led the team to a 37-year-old man from Plettenberg Bay in the Western Cape who was arrested in February this year. And the police managed to find evidence on the computer material of the suspect from Plettenberg Bay, which led them to the couple from Port Elizabeth. This is actually going out of hand. Children are being subjected to this filth that is actually being done by these people. Now, this arrest came soon after the same detectives of FCS arrested a man from the Eastern Cape for a similar crime nearly a week ago. The team arrested a 53-year-old man from Grahamstown for possessing, distributing, and dealing in child pornography. And most of the users of this material were found to have been from the United States of America, and this man is out on bail of 50,000 rand. And this man's arrest and that of the couple from Port Elizabeth are not related to the arrest of the man in Plettenberg Bay, even though they are of a similar in nature. Quickly coming on to our tech segment, like I mentioned last week, that the Samsung Galaxy S6 will be available from the 10th of April. You're welcome to go to your service provider. Many other service providers are advertising it. Absolutely brilliant phone. We know that during the latter part of the year, as we move on towards the end of the year, that Apple will release more products. We also spoke about the new MacBook that's going to come out as well. We're looking at a price of about 19,000 rand. But the Samsung Galaxy seems to be taking the storm at the moment. I asked a question last week whether you're going to be getting this phone, and maybe you want to change. But we also want to say that the rising smartphone use in South Africa is boosting local internet growth, resulting in a wave of technology that is forecast also into an impact of places of work. I mean, for us journalists, that we use these phones to such an extent, we use the internet so much, and it's no point in having a smartphone like the Galaxy S6 or an iPhone that if the data prices remain as high as it is at the moment. I think it's about 2 rand a meg. So until these costs come down and when you can get these powerful, massively powerful phones and you can use it with the internet, that is quite reasonable as well. It will make it easier for us to obviously to utilize the full capacity of the phone. And at the moment, we know that people are using WhatsApp and they are using more the data than what they're using calls and voice calls or SMSs or WhatsApp, because people want information, and information is at the moment in South Africa costing money. So again, if you want the Samsung Galaxy S6, 10th of April is a date to jot down in your diary. Like I said, pre-order the phone, otherwise you are going to be disappointed, and there's normally huge, massive back orders because it's an absolutely brilliant phone. Unfortunately, we've come to the end of another edition of Perspective for this week. Tune in again next week, inshallah, where we cover stories making local, national, and international headlines. Remember, you can interact with me by sending me a mail on faisal@itvnetworks.tv. You can drop me a tweet on @Faizi143, or you can even comment on facebook.com/Faizel Patel. From myself, Faizel Patel, and the magnificent team here at ITV, fi amanillah, assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
أناجي الحق في ليل بهيم أصدق النجوى وأدعو الله من قلب سليم يطلب التقوى أناجي الحق في ليل بهيم أصدق النجوى وأدعو الله من قلب سليم يطلب التقوى إلهي صرت في ظرف عصيب فاكشف البلوى فيا ربي أنا عبد لرد الضيم لا يقوى أعني ربي في